The massive orbital station hung in space like a jewel, its crystal spires stretching out in elegant curves that caught the light of 3 nearby stars. Ships from 100 worlds docked at its ports, each one a masterpiece of engineering, sleek vessels with flowing lines, others that shimmered with energy shields, and some that seemed to bend light itself around their hulls. This was the heart of galactic civilization, and today it would welcome its newest member. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of Earth's diplomatic shuttle, watching the station grow larger. Behind her, the 12 ships of Earth's defensive fleet waited in formation. She had seen the preliminary reports, read the private communications between council members. She knew what was coming. The shuttle docked smoothly, and Sarah stepped into the grand chamber where the Galactic Council convened. The room was enormous, with representatives from 47 species seated in tiers that rose toward a domed ceiling. Holographic displays floated everywhere, showing data streams and translations in hundreds of languages. High Commander Zefix of the Velsharn stood to greet her. He was tall and thin, with skin that rippled like mercury and 3 eyes that moved independently. His species had been spacefaring for 12,000 years, and it showed in every graceful movement he made. "Ambassador Chen," he said, his voice melodious and perfectly translated by her earpiece. "Welcome to the Council. We are pleased to finally invite humanity to join our alliance." Sarah bowed slightly, keeping her expression neutral. "Thank you, Commander. Earth is honored. Now then," Zefix continued, gesturing to the main display. "As per protocol, please present your defensive fleet for evaluation. This will determine your initial security rating and territorial assignment." Sarah nodded to her aide, who activated the transmission. The holographic display flickered, and suddenly the 12 ships of Earth's fleet appeared, rotating slowly for all to see. The reaction was immediate. A ripple of sound moved through the chamber. Sarah heard clicking, whistling, and sounds her translator rendered as laughter. She kept her face calm, her hands clasped behind her back. The ships did look crude compared to the vessels in the station's docks. They were boxy and utilitarian, with thick hulls covered in plates of armor. Their surfaces were gray and functional, with none of the elegant curves or shimmering fields that marked advanced vessels. They looked, Sarah had to admit, like flying warehouses. "These are your warships?" The question came from Ambassador Threll of the Kratheen, a warrior species covered in chitinous plates. Even he sounded amused. "They appear to be cargo haulers." More sounds of amusement echoed through the chamber. Sarah saw delegates leaning toward each other, exchanging comments. One of the insectoid representatives actually pointed at the display with a forelimb, his translator broadcasting something about primitive construction. High Commander Zefix raised a hand, calling for order. His expression was one of polite concern, but Sarah could see the condescension in his eyes. He approached the hologram, walking around it slowly. "Let us conduct a proper analysis," he said, pulling up data streams. "Propulsion system, fusion drives. Interesting. Most species abandoned fusion 7,000 years ago when we developed quantum displacement engines." He gestured, and the display zoomed in on one ship's hull. "Armor plating, physical armor, layers of metal and ceramic compounds." He turned to Sarah. "Ambassador, are you aware that modern vessels use energy shielding? It is far more efficient than carrying the weight of physical armor." "We are aware," Sarah said quietly. Zefix continued his examination. "Weapon systems appear to be primarily kinetic. Railguns and missile pods. No plasma cannons, no graviton beams, no quantum disruptors." He shook his head slowly. "These would barely penetrate modern shielding." Another delegate stood, a crystalline being whose voice chimed like bells. "If I may ask, what is the maximum velocity of these vessels?" Sarah's aide provided the data. The crystalline being's color shifted to what the translator indicated was amusement. "That is less than half the speed of our scout ships. These could never outrun a hostile force." "They are not designed to run," Sarah said. The words came out sharper than she intended. Zefix turned back to her, his expression softening into something Sarah recognized from her military days. It was the look a veteran gives a naive recruit. "Ambassador Chen, please understand. We are not mocking Earth. Every species goes through developmental stages. Your vessels are adequate for a pre-contact civilization, but now you are joining a larger community. You will have access to our technology databases. Within a generation, you can build proper warships." "These are proper warships," Sarah said. One of the Velsharn technicians spoke up. "Commander, I have completed the structural analysis. The hull thickness on these vessels is extraordinary. Some sections are over 3 meters of composite armor. That represents tremendous mass that could be better used for weapons or engines. Or shields," added another delegate. Zephyx pulled up a final assessment on the main display. Sarah read the conclusions, her jaw tightening. The analysis rated Earth's fleet as below minimum standards for modern warfare. It suggested that the vessels would be ineffective against any contemporary threat, and recommended that Earth be assigned low-priority territory in peaceful sectors until proper vessels can be constructed. "I trust you understand." "Ambassador," Zephyx said gently, "this is for your own protection. We will assign you a system in the outer arm, far from any hostile borders. You will have time to develop, to learn. In the meantime, the Council fleet will ensure your safety." Sarah took a deep breath. She had her orders from Earth. Accept the assignment, establish diplomatic relations, and above all avoid conflict. But standing here, listening to these beings dismiss a century of human engineering, made something hot burn in her chest. "We accept the assignment," she said formally. "But I want it noted in the official record that Earth considers its fleet adequate for any defensive action." Of course," Zephyx said, waving a hand dismissively. The gesture was so casual, so unconcerned that several delegates laughed again. The meeting concluded with formal ceremonies. Earth was given a star system called Hadrian's Star, 3 planets orbiting a yellow sun in a quiet sector. The territory came with mining rights and a small trading station. It was, Sarah knew, the kind of assignment given to species the Council considered harmless. As she left the chamber, a junior officer from the Council's technical division approached her. The young being was humanoid, with blue skin and large eyes. She introduced herself as Technician Lyra. "Ambassador Chen," Lyra said hesitantly. "I wanted to apologize for the reception. Some of the elder species can be set in their ways." Sarah managed to smile. "It's fine, Technician. We're used to being underestimated." "Still," Lyra continued, glancing back at the chamber, "I noticed something in your ship designs. The redundancy systems, the compartmentalization. It reminds me of deep-water vessels from my homeworld. Ships built for survival rather than speed." Sarah studied the young technician for a moment. "That's very perceptive. Yes, our ships are built to survive. Where we come from, survival is never guaranteed." Lyra nodded slowly. "I would like to learn more about human design philosophy if that is permitted." "I'll arrange it," Sarah said. She watched Lyra walk away, then turned back to the viewport where Earth's fleet waited in formation. Ugly, blocky, outdated ships by galactic standards. But they were human ships, built with human history behind every rivet and weld. She pressed her hand against the viewport's cold surface. "Let them laugh," she whispered. "We build things differently where we come from." Outside, the ESS Indomitable hung in space, its scarred hull reflecting starlight. Captain Marcus Webb stood on its bridge reading the Council's assessment report. He closed the file and smiled grimly. "They have no idea," he said to his first officer. "Not the slightest clue what these ships can do." The first officer nodded. "Should we be concerned about the mockery, sir?" Marcus looked at the tactical display, where the fleet was highlighted in blue. "No, let them think we're primitive. Let them think we're weak. Someday they'll learn the difference between looking advanced and being ready for war." He turned back to his crew. "Set course for Hadrian's Star. We have a territory to defend." The ESS Indomitable moved through space at what the Galactic Council considered a crawl. Captain Marcus Webb stood on the bridge watching the stars slide past on the main viewport. Behind him, the crew worked at their stations with practiced efficiency. The ship hummed with the steady rhythm of fusion engines, a sound that Marcus found comforting. A chime announced a visitor. Marcus turned to see Technician Lyra being escorted onto the bridge by his security chief. The young alien looked around with wide eyes, taking in the cramped space filled with physical consoles and manual controls. "Captain Webb," she said, bowing in the style her species used for greeting. "Thank you for allowing this visit. Ambassador Chen said you might show me your vessel." Marcus smiled. "Welcome aboard, Technician. I understand you're curious about how we build our ships." "Very curious," Lyra admitted. She approached one of the walls, running her hand along the exposed pipes and conduits. "This is unusual. Most modern vessels hide their internal systems behind panels. Why do you leave everything visible?" "Because we need to see it," Marcus said simply. He gestured for her to follow him as he began walking through the ship. Come on. I'll give you the full tour. They left the bridge and entered the main corridor. It was wide enough for 3 people to walk side by side, with handholds built into every surface. The walls were bare metal painted gray with color-coded pipes running along the ceiling. Your ship is very... Lyra searched for a diplomatic word. Ugly? Marcus offered with a grin. Primitive? Crude? Lyra's skin flushed a darker blue. I was going to say functional. That's the right word, Marcus said. He stopped at a junction where 6 different pipes met in a complicated arrangement of valves and pressure gauges. See this? This is our coolant system for the starboard reactor. These 3 pipes are the primary flow. These 2 are backup, and this one connects to the emergency thermal dump. 5 redundant systems for one function? Lyra asked, her eyes widening. 6, actually. There's another backup you can't see from here. Marcus continued walking. Every critical system on this ship has at least 5 backups. Some have more. They entered an elevator that descended into the ship's lower decks. Let me tell you about Earth, Marcus said as they descended. We're from a planet where nothing comes easy. Our world has storms that can tear apart buildings, oceans that can swallow entire cities, and weather patterns that change without warning. We learned early that if you don't build things tough, they don't survive. The elevator opened into the engineering section. The heat hit them immediately. Massive fusion reactors dominated the space, surrounded by technicians in heat-resistant suits. The noise was incredible, a deep thrumming that Lyra could feel in her bones. This is loud, she shouted over the din. This is normal, Marcus shouted back. He led her to an observation window overlooking the reactor core. See that? 3 fusion reactors, each one capable of powering the entire ship. If 2 fail completely, we can still fight. Lyra studied the reactors, her technical training kicking in. But the weight. 3 reactors when one would suffice. That mass could be used for more weapons or faster engines. Or shields, Marcus said, echoing what the council delegates had said. Yes, we've heard that before. But here's the thing, Lyra, shields fail. We've studied the technology. Energy shields are wonderful until someone hits them with enough force and then they collapse all at once. Our armor doesn't do that. You can blast holes in our hull all day and we'll still be fighting. They moved to the weapons deck next. Lyra examined the railgun systems with fascination. The weapons were massive, with ammunition feeds running throughout the ship. These are magnetic accelerators, she said. Very old technology. Very reliable technology, Marcus corrected. You know what's great about railguns? We can manufacture ammunition on board. We have a machine shop that can produce rounds during a battle. Try doing that with plasma cartridges or energy cells. He pulled up a schematic on a nearby console. Look at our weapons loadout. Railguns, missiles with multiple warhead types, torpedo tubes, point defense cannons, and in a pinch we can load debris into the railguns and shoot that too. We don't depend on one type of weapon system. Lyra was beginning to understand. You expect to be cut off from resupply. We assume it, Marcus said quietly. Every human warship is designed to operate independently for years if necessary. We have hydroponics bays for food, water recycling that's 99.7% efficient, and machine shops that can fabricate almost any part we need. They entered the hydroponics section, where rows of plants grew under artificial lights. The air was humid and smelled of earth. Crew members tended the plants, harvesting vegetables. A farm, Lyra said wonderingly. Inside a warship. Food is ammunition too, Marcus replied. A crew that's well-fed fights better. And if we're stranded somewhere for months, we don't starve. He led her to the medical bay next, which was larger than seemed necessary for a crew of 300. We have surgical facilities that can handle anything short of complete body reconstruction. We also have cold storage for casualties and a counseling center for psychological care. You plan for heavy casualties, Lyra observed. We plan for the worst possible scenario, Marcus said, because in our experience that's what usually happens. They returned to the bridge where Marcus pulled up a star chart. Let me show you something about human history, he said. He displayed Earth, then zoomed out to show the solar system. For most of our existence, humans lived on one planet. We fought each other constantly. Wars that lasted years, sometimes decades. We developed tactics for every environment. Jungles, deserts, oceans, mountains, even under the water and underground. He brought up images from Earth's history. Trenches filled with soldiers, submarines hunting beneath waves, tanks rolling across fields. aircraft carriers controlling vast stretches of ocean. We learned something important, Marcus continued. The side that survives longest usually wins. Not the fastest, not the most advanced, the one that refuses to quit. Lyra watched the images cycle past. She saw humans fighting in conditions that would kill most species. Freezing cold, burning heat, deep underwater, high in the atmosphere. When we finally reached space, Marcus said, we built our ships based on those lessons. We assumed we'd be alone. We assumed no one would come to rescue us. We assumed every fight would be desperate. He gestured around the bridge. That's why we build ships that look like this. Not because we're primitive, but because we're practical. Every human vessel is designed with one question in mind. Can it survive the worst day imaginable? Lyra was quiet for a long moment, processing everything she had seen. The council thinks you're backward, she finally said. I know, but you're not. You're just different. You come from a harsh world, so you build harsh ships. Marcus smiled. We call it being thorough. Our engineers have a saying, hope for the best, plan for the worst, and build something that can handle both. He walked to the viewport, looking out at the other 11 ships in the fleet. See those vessels? Each one is slightly different. Different captains, different crew compositions, different tactical preferences. We don't build cookie-cutter ships like the Council does. Every human captain has some freedom to modify their vessel. Why? Lyra asked. Because rigid tactics are predictable. If every ship fights the same way, an enemy can learn to counter you. But if every ship is a little different, if every captain makes their own decisions, you become unpredictable. Lyra approached the viewport, standing beside Marcus. The Council's fleet is very organized. They have standard formations, standard tactics. They've fought wars for thousands of years. They've fought civilized wars, Marcus said. Wars with rules and expectations. Wars where both sides use similar technology and tactics. He turned to look at her. Humans don't know how to fight civilized wars. We're too used to fighting for survival. The comm system chimed. Captain, we're approaching Hadrian's star. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. Acknowledged, Marcus replied. He looked back at Lyra. You're welcome to stay and observe our arrival procedures if you'd like. I would, Lyra said. Captain Webb, may I ask you something? Of course. If the Council is wrong about your ships, why did you accept their assessment? Why not demonstrate your capabilities? Marcus was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. Because being underestimated is an advantage. If everyone thinks you're weak, they don't prepare for you being strong. Besides, we don't have anything to prove. Not yet, not yet, Lyra echoed. Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. The galaxy is a big place, technician. Sooner or later, something dangerous is going to come along, something that the Council's elegant ships and refined tactics can't handle. And when that happens, everyone's going to learn what human ships are really built for. He turned back to his crew. All stations prepare for system entry. I want full sensor sweeps as soon as we drop out of FTL. Weapons to standby mode. Let's show our new home that Earth doesn't do anything halfway. Lyra watched the crew move with practiced precision. She thought about everything she had seen. The redundant systems, the practical design, the planning for worst-case scenarios. The Council had laughed at these ships, called them primitive and backward. But standing here on the Indomitable's bridge, watching humans prepare for arrival with Military F. The alert came 3 weeks after Earth's fleet arrived at Hadrian's star. Captain Marcus. Webb was reviewing supply reports when his communications officer suddenly stiffened at her station. Captain, priority alert from Council Central Command. They're broadcasting to all member fleets. On screen, Marcus ordered. The main viewport switched to show High Commander Zephyx. The elegant Velsharn looked shaken, his skin rippling with colors that Marcus's translator identified as distress. All Council forces, this is a Code Apex emergency. An unknown hostile fleet has emerged from dark space at coordinates 773 Mark 12. 2 Council battle groups have engaged the enemy. Both battle groups have been destroyed. Total casualties are estimated at 40,000 personnel across 18 vessels. A cold feeling spread through Marcus's chest. 18 vessels destroyed. That was more firepower than most species possessed in their entire fleet. The hostiles are designated as devourers. Zephyx continued. They appear to be artificial intelligences controlling automated warships. Their technology is extremely advanced. Energy weapons we've never encountered, adaptive shielding that learns from each attack, and targeting systems that predict our movements. The display showed footage from one of the destroyed Council ships. Marcus watched as sleek black vessels moved through space with impossible grace. They weren't just fast, they were precise. Each shot they fired hit exactly where it would do maximum damage. When Council ships tried to maneuver, the Devourers anticipated the movements and fired at where the ships would be, not where they were. It was slaughter, not battle. All territorial fleets are ordered to maintain defensive positions, Zephyx said. Do not engage the Devourers unless directly attacked. We are assembling a response fleet at Council headquarters. Until then, border sectors are to evacuate all non-essential personnel. The transmission ended. Marcus's bridge was silent for a moment. Sir, his tactical officer said quietly. Those coordinates. The Devourers are moving along the outer arm. If they continue their current heading, they'll reach us in about 4 days, Marcus finished. He brought up the tactical map, studying the enemy's projected path. It cut right through human territory. Another transmission came through, this time from Ambassador Chen. Her face appeared on a smaller screen. Captain Webb, I assume you've seen the alert. Yes. Ambassador. High Commander Zephyx has ordered us to evacuate Hadrian's Star. He says the Council fleet will mount a counterattack once they've assembled sufficient forces, but that could take weeks. We're supposed to abandon the colony. Marcus looked at the map again. Hadrian's Star had a population of 50,000, mostly miners and their families who had arrived on the first colony ships. What are your orders, Ambassador? Sarah Chen was quiet for a moment. Marcus could see her weighing her options, calculating political costs. Finally she spoke. Official orders are to comply with Council directives. Off the record, Captain, I didn't come all this way to abandon our people at the first sign of trouble. Marcus smiled grimly. Understood, Ambassador. Request permission to prepare the fleet for defensive operations. Permission granted. And Captain, try not to start an intergalactic incident? No promises, Marcus replied. The channel closed. Marcus turned to his crew. All hands battle stations. Communications. Send a message to all Earth vessels. We're staying. The bridge erupted into coordinated chaos. Crew members rushed to their combat positions. Throughout the ship, bulkheads sealed automatically. The Indomitable's reactors increased output, sending more power to weapons and sensors. Sir, incoming transmission from the Council. His communications officer reported. High Commander Zephyx wants to speak with you. Put him through. Zephyx appeared on the screen, his 3 eyes focused intently on Marcus. Captain Webb, I have been informed that your fleet is preparing for combat. Surely you received the evacuation order. We did, Marcus confirmed. We're choosing not to follow it. Zephyx's skin rippled with what looked like frustration. Captain, I appreciate your courage, but your fleet stands no chance against the Devourers. They destroyed 2 battle groups equipped with the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Your vessels, as we established during your evaluation, are not up to modern standards. That evaluation was based on Council standards, Marcus said, not combat effectiveness. This is not bravado I'm hearing, is it? Zephyx asked. Captain, please be reasonable. Those are your people on that colony. If you truly care about them, you'll evacuate them before the Devourers arrive. If we evacuate, we lose the territory, Marcus pointed out. We lose the mining operations, the infrastructure, everything we've built. The Devourers will fortify this position, and retaking it will cost thousands of lives. Better than the alternative, Zephyx said sharply. I have seen the tactical data. The Devourers adapt to any strategy within minutes. They predict movements, counter-tactics, and overwhelm defenses. Your 12 ships cannot hold against 3 of their capital vessels. Marcus pulled up the Devourer footage again, studying it. They're predictive AI learning algorithms. They analyze patterns and exploit weaknesses. Exactly, Zephyx said, which is why standard tactics are useless. We need time to develop new strategies. Or, Marcus said slowly, we need to use strategies they've never seen before. Zephyx stared at him. You cannot be serious. Captain Webb, I am formally ordering you to evacuate. You have 24 hours to clear the system. After that, this sector will be classified as lost territory. Acknowledged, Marcus said. We'll be here when you change its classification back to secure. He cut the transmission before Zephyx could respond. His first officer raised an eyebrow. That was diplomatically aggressive, sir. Diplomacy is the ambassador's job, Marcus replied. Ours is to hold this line. He activated the fleet-wide channel. All vessels, this is Webb. You've all seen the footage. You know what we're facing. I won't lie to you. This is going to be the hardest fight any of us have ever been in. He paused, looking at the faces of his bridge crew. They were scared. He could see that. But they were also determined. The Council thinks we can't win, Marcus continued. They think our ships are too old, too slow, too primitive. They're probably watching right now, waiting for us to run. But here's what they don't understand about humans. We don't know how to quit. Our species has been fighting impossible odds since we learned to make fire. We've survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and our own worst instincts. We didn't crawl out of Earth's gravity well just to run away when things get tough. He brought up the tactical display. The Devourers are smart. They learn fast, adapt faster. But they're machines. They think in patterns and probabilities. They've fought the Council fleets, learned their tactics, and probably have counters ready for every standard maneuver in the book. Marcus smiled. Good thing we didn't read that book. We're going to fight like humans, not like the Council. That means no standard formations, no predictable tactics, and absolutely no rules about what's fair in combat. We're going to be chaotic, unpredictable, and too stubborn to know when we're beaten. One of his tactical officers spoke up. Sir, the Devourers have superior firepower. How do we counter that? We don't counter it, Marcus said. We survive it. That's what these ships were built for. We take the hits, we keep fighting, and we make them pay for every meter of space they try to take. The Council builds ships to win quickly. We build ships to win eventually. He looked around the bridge again. I need each captain to prepare their own tactical plans. Don't coordinate with each other. Don't follow standard patterns. I want 12 different strategies, 12 different approaches. Make the Devourers think they're fighting 12 different species. The hours passed quickly. The Earth fleet moved into defensive positions around Hadrian's Star. On the colony below, civilians were evacuated to underground shelters. The mining stations were locked down, their crews armed and prepared to resist boarding actions. Technician Lyra, who had stayed with the fleet to study human methods, stood on the Indomitable's bridge. She watched the preparations with growing anxiety. Captain Webb, she said quietly. May I speak freely? Always, Marcus replied. The Council fleet had shields and advanced weapons. They were destroyed in minutes. Your ships have neither. How do you expect to survive? Marcus walked to the viewport, looking at the other 11 Earth vessels. They hung in space like gray fortresses, their hulls scarred from the journey, their weapons bristling. The Council expects to win, he said. They design their ships for victory. Clean, quick engagements where superior technology decides the outcome. But humans? We don't expect to win. We expect to fight. There's a difference. He turned to face her. Those ships out there have armor 3 meters thick. They have backup systems for their backup systems. They can manufacture their own ammunition, grow their own food, and operate for years without resupply. They weren't built to defeat enemies. They were built to outlast them. And if outlasting them isn't enough? Lyra asked. Marcus's expression hardened. Then we make sure that defeating us costs them more than they're willing to pay. In human military history, we have a saying. Victory is expensive, but defeat is free. We're going to make this tea. The Devourer ships moved like predators through space, their black hulls reflecting no light. They were beautiful in a terrible way, all sharp angles and flowing curves that seemed designed by something that understood death on an artistic level. As they closed on the human fleet, their weapons charged with a sound that registered on every sensor. Captain Marcus Webb watched them approach. Tactical, what are we seeing? 3 capital ships, sir. Each one is twice the size of our largest vessel. Energy readings are off the scale. They're powering up some kind of directed energy weapons. Shields are already active. Time to weapons range? 4 minutes at their current speed, sir. Marcus opened the fleet channel. All vessels maintain positions. Let them come to us. Remember, unpredictable means unpredictable. Don't follow my lead. Follow your instincts. The Devourers clearly expected the human ships to maneuver, to try the standard Council tactics of spreading out and using superior speed. Instead, the Earth fleet held position in a loose cluster around Hadrian Star's largest moon. The Devourers' first attack was devastating. Beams of purple energy lanced out. Hitting the ESS Thermopylae square on, the energy should have vaporized the ship instantly. That's what it had done to Council vessels. Instead, the beam burned through the outer armor layers and then stopped, absorbed by the thick composite plating underneath. Thermopylae reporting damage to outer hull plates, the communications officer said. No breach. All systems operational. Marcus allowed himself a small smile. Return fire. All weapons. The human fleet opened up with everything they had. Railgun rounds, traveling at a significant fraction of light speed, slammed into the Devourer's shields. The shields flared and held, but the kinetic energy had to go somewhere. The Devourer's ships actually rocked from the impacts. Missiles followed, hundreds of them, each one taking a slightly different trajectory. The Devourer's point defense systems opened up, destroying most of the missiles. But not all. Dozens got through, detonating against the shields in brilliant flashes. They're adapting, the tactical officer reported. The Devourers are analyzing our fire patterns and adjusting their shields to compensate. Expected, Marcus said. Helm pattern web 7. The Indomitable didn't dart away like a council ship would have. Instead, it rotated in place, bringing fresh armor sections to face the enemy while its weapons continued firing. The maneuver was slow by galactic standards, but it was something the Devourers hadn't seen before. The other human ships each began their own unique movements. The ESS Yorktown accelerated directly at the Devourers, firing all weapons. The ESS Churchill went into a tumbling spin that should have made accurate fire impossible. Yet somehow its railguns kept hitting their targets. The ESS Stalingrad simply stopped moving entirely and became a stationary gun platform. The Devourer's AI tried to analyze the patterns. There were none. Each human ship fought differently, as if they were 12 separate fleets rather than one coordinated force. A Devourer beam caught the ESS Berlin, punching through armor that had already been weakened. The ship vented atmosphere, emergency bulkheads slamming shut. Berlin reporting casualties, communications said. They've lost weapons sections 3 and 4. Still fighting. The Berlin didn't retreat. Instead, it continued firing with its remaining weapons even as repair crews worked to seal the breach. The Devourer that had damaged it moved in for the kill shot. The ESS Moscow had been waiting for exactly this moment. It had been drifting, pretending to be more damaged than it was. Now it lit off its engines and crossed the distance to the Devourer at maximum acceleration. Instead of firing weapons, it rammed. 300,000 tons of human warship traveling at combat speed hit the Devourer's shield like a hammer. The shield held for almost a full second before collapsing. The Moscow's reinforced bow smashed into the Devourer's hull, crushing armor and ripping through internal systems. Both ships tumbled away from each other. The Moscow was heavily damaged, its front section completely destroyed. But the Devourer was worse off, with atmosphere venting from a dozen breaches. That was insane, Lyra whispered, watching from her station on the Indomitable's bridge. That was effective, Marcus corrected. The Devourers can adapt to weapons. They can't adapt to 300,000 tons of mass moving at high speed. Physics doesn't negotiate. The battle evolved into something ugly and brutal. The Devourers tried to use their speed advantage, but the human ships didn't try to chase them. They held position, turning their thickest armor toward threats and absorbing punishment that would have destroyed Council vessels. They're learning our weapons patterns, the tactical officer reported. Their shields are adapting to our railgun rounds. Switch to missiles with nuclear warheads, Marcus ordered, and load the railguns with depleted uranium rounds instead of tungsten. Change everything. Don't let them adapt. The ESS Indomitable shuddered as another energy beam hit it. Alarms blared. Damage to sections 8 through 12. We've lost our starboard reactor. Switch to port reactor. Engineering, how long to get starboard back online? Minimum 2 hours, Captain. You have 30 minutes, Marcus said. Throughout the ship, damage control teams were already moving, welding plates, replacing components, working with practiced efficiency. The Devourers changed tactics. They had learned that the human ships wouldn't run, so they tried to overwhelm them with concentrated fire. All 3 capital ships focused on the ESS Thermopylae. The ship's captain, Commander Sarah Rodriguez, saw it coming. All crew, brace for impact. Get everyone into the core sections. The Devourers fired simultaneously. Energy beams converged on the Thermopylae from 3 directions. The ship's armor glowed white-hot, then red, then began to fail. Sections of the hull were simply vaporized. But the Thermopylae didn't die cleanly. Its internal structure, built with compartmentalization in mind, kept the ship fighting even as pieces of it were destroyed. Its remaining weapons kept firing. Its crew kept fighting. Thermopylae is critical, communications reported. They're evacuating non-essential personnel to escape pods. Tell them to launch pods toward us, Marcus ordered. We'll recover survivors. This was something else the Devourers hadn't seen. Council ships, when damaged, retreated or died. Human ships fought until they were physically incapable of continuing, and even then they found ways to hurt the enemy. Commander Rodriguez, knowing her ship was dying, made one final decision. She ordered the reactor safeties disabled and set a collision course with the nearest Devourer. The Thermopylae's engines burned at maximum, pushing the dying ship forward. The Devourer tried to move, but the Thermopylae anticipated the maneuver. The AI predicted based on logical tactics. Rodriguez didn't use logic. She used instinct and rage and a very human refusal to die quietly. The Thermopylae hit the Devourer at full speed, and its reactors overloaded simultaneously. The explosion was visible from the colony below, a new sun burning in space for 3 full seconds. When the light faded, both ships were gone. Thermopylae destroyed, communications reported quietly. All escape pods away. 80% of the crew survived. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment. Recover the pods. And make those bastards pay for Sarah. The battle had been raging for 7 hours. The human fleet had been reduced to 8 operational vessels. But the Devourers had been reduced to 2 capital ships, both heavily damaged. Marcus studied the tactical display. The Devourer AI was learning, adapting, countering, but it was learning the wrong lessons. It expected logic, patterns, predictability. The humans gave it chaos. Open a channel to all ships, Marcus said. New orders. Every vessel is to fight independently. No coordination, no patterns. Captains, do whatever you think will work. Don't tell me, don't tell each other. Just hurt them. What followed was a masterclass in asymmetric warfare. The ESS Yorktown broadcast heavy metal music at full volume on all frequencies, then used the distraction to slip in close and unload its entire missile payload. The ESS Churchill pretended to have reactor failure, went dark, and waited until a Devourer approached before firing every weapon simultaneously at point-blank range. The ESS Indomitable, missing half its armor and down to 1 reactor, started using its railguns to shoot debris at the Devourers. Old armor plates, destroyed equipment, even frozen waste from the recycling systems. Anything with mass became a weapon. This is insane, Lyra said, watching humans fight with what seemed like complete disregard for military doctrine. This is human, Marcus replied. We don't fight wars like the Council. We fight wars like we're trying to survive the end of the world. One of the Devourer capital ships, having taken too much damage, attempted to retreat. The ESS Berlin and ESS Cairo, both heavily damaged themselves, pursued it. They harried it for 3 hours, taking shots whenever they could, refusing to let it escape. Eventually, the Devourer's shields failed, and the 2 human ships destroyed it with concentrated fire. The final Devourer capital ship, its AI finally reaching a conclusion, did something that shocked everyone watching from Council headquarters. It retreated. Not a tactical withdrawal, but a full retreat, jumping into FTL and abandoning the battle. For the first time in its observed existence, the Devourer fleet had run away. The silence on the Indomitable's bridge was deafening. Then slowly someone started clapping. Others joined. Within moments, the entire crew was cheering. Marcus, the emergency session of the Galactic Council, convened 6 hours after the battle ended. The chamber, usually filled with dignified conversation and carefully worded statements, was in chaos. Representatives from 47 species talked over each other, demanding answers, explanations, analysis. High Commander Zephyx stood at the center podium, his skin rippling with colors that indicated stress and confusion. Behind him, holographic displays showed footage from the battle at Hadrian's Star. The images played on repeat, showing human ships taking damage that should have been fatal and continuing to fight. Order, Zephyx called out, his voice amplified. I must have order. The chamber slowly quieted. Zephyx took a moment to compose himself before speaking. What we witnessed at Hadrian's Star should not have been possible. By every tactical analysis, every mathematical model, every piece of military doctrine we possess, the human fleet should have been destroyed within the first hour of engagement. He pulled up a tactical breakdown, The Devourer fleet consisted of 3 capital ships, each equipped with adaptive AI, energy weapons capable of penetrating standard shielding, and tactical processors that can predict enemy movements with 97% accuracy. This same force destroyed 2 of our battle groups, accounting for over 40,000 casualties. The chamber was silent now, every representative watching. The human fleet, Zephyx continued, his voice carrying a note of something that might have been awe, consisted of 12 vessels using outdated fusion drives, no energy shielding, and primarily kinetic weapons. By our assessment standards, they were not equipped to face even a single modern warship, let alone 3 Devourer capital ships. He paused, looking around the chamber. They won. Not only did they win, but they forced the Devourers to retreat. This is the first documented case of a Devourer fleet withdrawing from combat. Ambassador Chen sat in Earth's designated section, watching Zephyx struggle to explain what had happened. She had barely slept since the battle, coordinating recovery efforts and managing communications with Earth. But she wouldn't miss this session for anything. We need to understand their tactics, Admiral Threll of the Creathene said, standing from his seat. How did they defeat an enemy that adapted to every strategy we employed? Zephyx brought up combat footage. From what we can determine, they didn't use tactics in the traditional sense. Each human vessel operated independently, with no central coordination after the initial engagement. The Devourer AI, which learns by analyzing patterns and predicting outcomes, found no patterns to analyze. He showed a clip of the ESS Churchill spinning wildly, while somehow maintaining accurate fire. This maneuver makes no tactical sense. It wastes energy, makes the ship harder to control, and should reduce weapons accuracy. Yet it worked because the Devourer AI had never encountered such an irrational approach. Another representative stood, this one a crystalline being from a species known for logic and mathematics. Commander Zephyx, are you suggesting the humans won through randomness? Through chaos? Not randomness, Zephyx replied carefully. Creativity, adaptability, a willingness to try approaches that our tactical computers would classify as inefficient or dangerous. He looked directly at Ambassador Chen. They fought like no species we have ever encountered. Another clip played, showing the ESS Moscow ramming the Devourer ship. The chamber filled with sounds of shock and dismay. Ramming attacks were considered primitive, desperate, wasteful. They sacrificed a vessel to damage the enemy, someone said. That is not tactics, that is desperation. No, Zephyx said quietly. That was calculation. The Moscow's captain determined that a ramming attack would be more effective than continued weapons fire. He was correct. The Devourer ship never recovered from that damage. He looked around the chamber again. I believe it is time we acknowledge something difficult. The Galactic Council has been spacefaring for thousands of years. We have refined our warfare to an art form. We have elegant ships, powerful weapons, and sophisticated tactics. But we have also become predictable. We fight the way we have always fought, and our enemies have learned to counter us. Zephyx pulled up an image of Earth. Humanity comes from a world that tried to kill them at every turn. They spent their entire evolutionary history fighting for survival. They didn't develop spaceflight in a time of peace and exploration. They reached the stars while still fighting wars among themselves. Their military doctrine is based on one simple principle: survive at any cost, by any means necessary. Ambassador Chen stood. High Commander, if I may address the Council? Zephyx nodded. The floor recognizes Ambassador Chen of Earth. Sarah walked to the speaker's platform. She had thought about what to say during the entire trip from Hadrian's Star. Now, looking at the assembled representatives, she chose her words carefully. Thank you, Commander Zephyx. I have listened to your analysis of the battle, and I appreciate your efforts to understand what happened. But I think you're missing something important. She gestured to the footage still playing on the displays. You see chaos and desperation. You see tactics that don't make sense according to your military doctrine. But from a human perspective, those ships were doing exactly what they were designed to do. Sarah brought up a schematic of the ESS Indomitable. Look at this vessel. You mocked it when we arrived. You called it primitive, outdated, inefficient. You were right by your standards. But you were evaluating it based on what you think a warship should be. She zoomed in on the armor plating. This ship has 3 meters of composite armor. That's not because we don't understand energy shielding. It's because we've learned that systems fail, Shields can be overloaded or disrupted. Armor just sits there and takes damage until it's physically destroyed. It's simple, reliable, and it keeps working when more advanced systems would have failed. More schematics appeared. 5 backup systems for every critical function. Internal factories for manufacturing ammunition and parts. Hydroponics bays for food production. These aren't the features of a warship. They're the features of a ship designed to survive alone in hostile territory for years if necessary. She looked around the chamber. You asked how we defeated the Devourers. We didn't defeat them through superior technology or elegant tactics. We defeated them through stubbornness. We built ships that refused to die, and we crewed them with people who refused to quit. One of the council members, a being covered in feathers, spoke up. But Ambassador, your losses were severe. 4 ships destroyed, thousands of casualties. Surely a more sophisticated approach would have minimized these losses. Sarah's expression hardened. Maybe. But a more sophisticated approach, as you call it, would have meant abandoning the colony. The council ordered us to retreat. We chose to fight. Yes, we paid a price. We always pay a price. But we held the line. She brought up footage of the ESS Thermopylae's final moments. Commander Rodriguez knew her ship was dying. She could have retreated, saved more of her crew. Instead, she rammed the enemy and took them with her. That's not desperation. That's a choice. A human choice. The chamber was silent. Sarah continued. Earth would like to formally request access to the Council's technology databases, as was promised when we joined. We want to learn from you, to improve our vessels. But understand this, we will never build ships like yours. We will never adopt tactics that require everything to go perfectly. We will always build for the worst possible scenario, because that's what we know how to survive. High Commander Zefik stepped forward. Ambassador Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I must offer a formal apology. We misjudged your species and your capabilities. We saw primitiveness where we should have seen pragmatism. He performed a bow, which was significant for a Velsharn of his rank. The Council has completed a new assessment of Earth's fleet. Your vessels are hereby classified as Level 9 defensive assets, the highest rating available. Your territory has been upgraded to priority protection status. Sarah bowed back. Thank you, Commander. Earth accepts this classification. Additionally, Zefix continued, the Council wishes to request human assistance in reviewing our fleet designs and tactical doctrines. It is clear that we have become too dependent on technology and standardized responses. We would benefit from your practical approach, Sarah smiled slightly. We would be happy to share our experience. Though I should warn you, our approach isn't easy. It requires accepting that things will go wrong, that ships will be damaged, that people will die. It requires building for survival rather than victory. Nevertheless, Zefix said, we must learn. The Devourers are still out there, and now we know that conventional tactics are insufficient. Over the next weeks, teams of galactic engineers and military officers traveled to human shipyards. They walked through vessels under construction, examining the redundant systems and thick armor plating. They attended briefings on human military history, learning about tactics developed in Earth's countless wars. Technician Lyra became one of the primary liaisons between human and galactic engineering teams. She had transferred permanently to serve with the human fleet, fascinated by their approach to design and combat. The key, she explained to a group of Velsharn engineers, is accepting that efficiency isn't EV,